Welcome to BrandAPeel, where I'm going to help you create market appeal through brand storytelling. And today, this episode is all about point of view and how the point of view will change depending on whether or not you're telling a personal brand story or a business brand story, because these two types of brand storytelling are different. We're going to start with an exercise. So I want you to close your eyes. Everyone's got their eyes closed? And I want you to imagine summer is here and it is hot. The air is stagnant. It feels like you're in an oven. It's so hot that when you look around, you can see the heat waves rising off the ground. Suddenly, you feel a bead of sweat running down the side of your face and dripping off your jaw. You're covered in sweat. But your mouth feels dry. In fact, your tongue is sticking to the roof of your mouth and you realize you're thirsty. It feels like you're dying from thirst because you've never been this thirsty before. You move your tongue around your mouth, trying to remove that sticky feeling of thirst. And all you want right now is a cold, refreshing drink. And guess what? You have one. Go on, reach for it. Wrap your fingers around that cold, refreshing beverage. Okay, open your eyes and think, what brand did you grab and how bad do you want one right now? So there are a few subtle ways a brand can insert themselves into this type of story to motivate you to act and go and buy that refreshing beverage. Today, I wanted you to experience which brand is your go-to for quenching your thirst. Now, before you say it, those of you who reach for tap water instead of a branded beverage, that's great. Your municipality has done a great job of quenching your thirst and making tap water your brand of choice to solve that need. And it's the same if you reach for iced tea or lemonade or beer. Any type of beer will do. Brands don't have to be a business. They can be anything that you've established as a go-to solution to a problem or need. This is why we have things like Kleenex and Post-its, where the object has basically the brand name, and the brand doesn't matter. Now, a good storyteller doesn't tell a story. A good storyteller shows a story. What do I mean? Glad you asked. So I'm going to tell you a story. See, a live band was playing at this wedding reception. After the first break, the lead singer came up and addressed us. And he said, "Hey, everyone, we have a 15-year-old kid here who has asked if he can play with the band." Now, he's only been playing for a couple of years, and it's really hard to learn an instrument. So be patient with him, okay? Offer him your support. It takes a lot of courage to get up here in front of you all. So let's just be kind. Well, of course, everyone in the audience, everyone on the dance floor looked up on the stage, and this boy walked up on stage and he borrowed the lead singer's guitar and they started to jam. And during the song, the drummer's mouth hung open and his jaw kept going further and further to the ground. The bass guitarist kept shaking his head and looking at the kid. And after they finished playing the song, the lead singer bellowed into the mic, "Now that is talent. Wow, kid, you can play with us anytime." And that is how my son showed our family that he's a rock star instead of telling them. Showing is about allowing people to experience the story for themselves. Now, in different studies, researchers have discovered that when people are lectured at, they tend to get tired. They shut down and want to go to sleep. Basically, they tune out. We've all done it. Whereas when told a story, the audience is moved to action. They may not move physically in the moment, but their minds are engaged. Ideas start coming at them from left and right, and they are motivated to do something, even if it's to lean in and listen to what I'm saying right now, and put by that refreshing beverage on your grocery list. Now, not all stories are created equal. Many storytellers take the tell part of storytelling literally, and they tell the audience a story. And the story quickly reverts to a lecture disguised as a story. Now, there are a number of reasons of why this happens. They haven't learned how to craft an engaging story. They don't trust the audience to put one and one together to get two. They think the audience needs a bunch of details and backstory, or they want everyone to know how smart they think they are. Well, if we were sitting in a coffee shop having a conversation about all the reasons why people lecture people, we could come up with a ton of reasons, but I'm going to leave that exercise to you, because right now I'm going to dive into how to tell the right story to the right audience. Now, good storytellers know their audience. Last winter, or I guess I should say COVID winter, because I don't know when you're watching this, right? So it's about keeping it evergreen. Well, that means I have to keep the details extremely generic or vague or at any time. Okay, but basically during a COVID winter, we had a reprise in restrictions and we could go out. So I was scrolling through Eventbrite and I saw these tickets to a comedy show and I thought, hey, why not? I'd love to laugh at something besides my COVID hairdo. So I bought a ticket, put the event on my empty calendar, and when the Friday came, I jumped in a taxi and I went for a ride. So there I was, sitting at the bar, drinking an expensive glass of cheap wine in this tiny dive of a club, looking forward to having something to laugh at. Now, the comedians came up for their set, and they were all 30-something, unmarried, no kids. Some played for the other team, others drank a lot, and had fun with the odd recreational drug. Now, as you can see, I'm nearly 50. I'm divorced, sure I'm single, but I'm an empty nester with 2 grown kids. I'm a social drinker, and though I can smell the BC bud in the air, I rarely partake. Now, do you think I found the comedians' jokes funny? Not really. Even the dating ones didn't really land because they had different experiences than I had. So I couldn't relate to what they were talking about. Their stories fell flat, their punchlines didn't land with me. Just me. Because I was probably the oldest in the room by a couple decades. The comedians were getting plenty of laughs because 99.9% of the audience was the right audience for them. I'm the one who hadn't done the research. Now, when it comes to knowing your audience to determine the story you will tell and how you will tell it, there is a difference between personal brand storytelling and business brand storytelling. So if you are on the personal brand storytelling stage, the right audience will find you because they relate to your story. And like the comedians on stage, people who enjoyed their type of comedy made a point to be there that night because they knew they'd like the comedy. Heck, they even brought friends. But when it comes to business brand storytelling, you have to do the research and find out more about your audience. You need to know what they need, what they like, what they do, and then go out and find where they hang out. So let's take my night of comedy. It would be as if I was the business who knew that 30-something single people who like to drink and party needed my product. And I went there to get on stage and tell them a story that related to them, but didn't have much to do with me. Because in my 30s, I was married with 2 kids. And so I'd have to do the research. I'd have to find out about their experiences, what they thought was funny, and craft stories to engage them. So if there's one point I want you to walk away with today, it's this. In personal brand storytelling, audiences find you because they like your story. In business brand storytelling, you find audiences and tell their story to them. Sound hard? It's just a lot of work. Now, the indices of the story enable people to interpret the meaning of the story by relating their experiences with the story being told. Indices, Shannon, don't use jargon. Right, no jargon. Indices are the details people can relate to. So in my comedy club story, the comedian's indices or details of being 30, single, gay, partying were not things my experiences could match up with. So there was a disconnect between the details. This is why knowing which details to include in the story is important to ensure you attract the right audience and connect with them. So let's go back to the story of you being hot and thirsty. I picked heat and thirst as indices details because I'm confident that most of the population has experienced heat and thirst. Plus, they probably have a refreshing beverage to fulfill that need. Now, if you noticed, I didn't tell you where you were, what you were doing, or why you were there. I simply told you you were hot and thirsty and asked you to grab a drink. You filled in the other details of the experience. And each of you experienced the same story differently. So let's say I was writing for a company and they wanted their audience to be filled with 30-something single mothers. I'd add details specific to their situation and their experiences to ensure they related with the story and other people didn't. I'd add sounds of kids playing, maybe whining for ice cream. I'd set up the sprinkler in the backyard. Probably something about there being so much to do around the house, though it's hot and I'm tired. Probably wishing there was someone else who could mow the lawn as I sat drinking a cold beverage. Now I have more details to qualify the audience, and I want to go out and tell stories about that experience because my client sells lawn care services. Knowing the audience is important because the more focused the audience, the more common threads you can identify and the more details you can enhance the story, and you can draw those individuals deeper into your story. So in regards to the heat and thirst story, the other thing I did was I described a situation because memory is episodic, meaning stories that include inciting incidents, experiences, events, outcomes, relationships can easily be brought to the surface to engage them in the story. Now, I crafted the story to trigger a memory so you could fill in the environment around you, re-experience that moment you were hot and thirsty and how you felt about that cold, refreshing beverage in your hand. Now, if you remember, I also didn't mention if it was a glass, a can, or a bottle because I didn't know your memory, where it placed you, or where the drink could be in relation to your physical body. Was it on a table, in a backpack, a cooler, a fridge? I don't know, but you did. I only wanted to trigger that memory and have you think of the beverage you would reach for. So retrieving, reliving, or repeating of stories results in what Aristotle refers to as proper pleasure or a catharsis, a slow unfolding of tragedy and catastrophe that leads to the moment of realization and release, or the experience of catharsis. Once you have determined the catharsis you want the audience to experience, you have to determine who will fulfill 3 roles: storyteller, hero, and audience. Now, this is where traditional storytelling and personal brand storytelling diverge from business brand storytelling. Let me explain. When writing a novel, I either write in the first person or the third person, depending on the experience I want the reader to have with the character. When I write in the first person, I'm putting the audience in the role of voyeur. It's like they're up on stage with the hero, watching the story unfold without any extra details beyond what the hero can see or know. The hero and the storyteller are one and the same. The storyteller only knows what the hero knows about the story, and the audience experiences that story through the hero's point of view. This is where personal brand brand storytelling happens because the person is both the hero and the storyteller. The audience's role is just to watch it unfold. When I write in the third person, I am putting the storyteller between the audience and the hero, enabling me to tell the audience things the hero doesn't know. I've removed the audience from the stage and put them back into the seats to watch scenes unfold with different character groupings on the stage. The audience experiences the story from the storyteller's point of view and will know more about the story than the hero does. In the third person, there's 3 separate people in each role: storyteller, the hero, and the audience. And oftentimes, this is the point of view and the method that people use when they tell brand stories, business brand stories. But there's a better way when it comes to business brand storytelling. And that is if the hero of the story and the audience are one and the same. There's nothing between the audience and the hero because the audience is the hero. And the storyteller guides the hero, who is also the individual in the audience, through their own story. This is the only place where writing a story in the second person works. So you want to use you language. So let's go back to the original story of you being hot and thirsty. I was telling the story. I was a storyteller. But the story was about each of you who have watched this individually. And I, the storyteller, couldn't see what was happening in the story beyond my own point of view. And my point of view was very limited to heat, thirst, and the idea of a beverage, the promise of catharsis. So as a storyteller, I needed to put you into a situation where a need could take place to motivate you to want catharsis. So you'd take action and purchase that cold, refreshing beverage that will solve your problem. So here's another point I want you to take away from today. In traditional storytelling and personal brand storytelling, the audience is passive, meaning they watch the story unfold and don't affect the narrative or the hero's journey. The story exists regardless if they are watching or not. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't engage. They can engage with the story by liking, making a comment, talking to the hero, but the story is the story. It's not their story. They just watch it unfold. But in business brand storytelling, the audience is active. They add details to the story. They determine the hero's transformational journey. And without them, there is no story because they're the hero. They're the ones on that transformational journey. They click to go one way or the other through the digital world and steer their customer journey from awareness through to advocacy of the solution they found. And it is the job of the brand storyteller to ensure the brand is considered as the preferred solution. We've all seen movies, read books where the hero doesn't change, become self-aware, or in the case of Game of Thrones, even stayed alive. Well, in brand storytelling, the objective is to help the audience transition from the problem to the promise of a solution, to go from unhappy to the promise of happiness. And if you want to explore this topic, go to marketaPeel.com, where I have lots of articles, some programs, podcast episodes, and digital magazines filled with information and examples of business brand storytelling. Plus, because you've watched this, you receive the PDF workbook with questions to help you construct your personal brand or business brand story. This episode is part of the CreateAPeel membership. If you want to dive further into your brand story and build out your digital footprint, and you'd like some guidance in how to do that, workbooks to help you arrange your thoughts, as well as time to talk with myself and other members of the community to get ideas, become a CreateAPeel member. You just go to marketaPeel.com and click on the membership, which is under the leather journal. Until the next episode of CreateAPeel, peel out.